Happy Valentine's Day, duelists! It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel a combos and test hands video for my Evil Eye Yubel deck list for the post-Phantom Nightmare format. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh! Content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! That you're interested in, then I highly encourage for you to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any more of my uploads. We are currently working our way to 1,500 subs, and I need your help to get there. There's bound to be something on this channel that you like and you don't want to miss out on the spice that I've brought in the past and that I will continue bringing in the future. So with that being said, Yubel, what better way to spend Valentine's Day with the loving defender forever herself? For those of you who've watched the anime and are fans of Yubel, you'll know that Yubel is literally the ultimate protector and will have your back to the end of time, even if it means hurting other people to do that, which is obviously very crazy, but again, anime spoilers. Either way, I wanted to bring you guys the combos and test hands for this deck because I've been requested to by some people who left comments on the deck profile, and I know there's tons of fans out there for both Evil Eye and Yubel as archetypes individually, but I'm here to show you guys why playing these two themes together is actually really beneficial and so much fun. So with the intro out of the way, I do want to point out that I actually have optimized this deck list, so it's different, slightly different from the original deck profile. The original profile was actually 44 cards. The deck is now sitting at 41, and my goal was just to increase consistency and kind of cut out some of the brickiness that it had previously. So before we get started, I'm just going to very quickly run through the deck list. That way you guys can kind of be up to speed on some of the changes I made. And I'm not really going to go in detail about what the cards do, but I will talk about some of the changes I made and why. So we're on 3 Surzeal. Obviously that needs no introduction. It's just basically the starter for the Evil Eye deck. You max out on that. We're still on 2 copies of Basilius and 2 Basiltrist. That hasn't changed from the previous list. These cards are amazing extenders. Gone though is the Catobleepus. Despite it being an extender, I just felt that the card didn't really do all that much, and it did require a setup, given that you needed to control an Evil Eye card before it could be specialed from the graveyard specifically. So I ended up cutting it just again to increase consistency. We do have the 2 copies of the original Yubel and the 1 Terror Incarnate. I think 2 Yubel for this particular list is perfect, and then the 1 Terror Incarnate is more than enough. We are not playing the last form, the Ultimate Nightmare. I just feel like that form's super bricky and just isn't needed. Just 2 Yubel, 1 Terror Incarnate's more than enough. So moving on, we are playing 3 Spirit of Yubel. Definitely an amazing card. You want to max out on that, so no introductions needed there. We are, however, playing 1 Samsara D-Lotus and 1 Geist Grinder. Samsara D-Lotus is cut down from a 2-of that she previously was, now to 1. And that's only because it just competes for the normal summon with Surzeal. And 9 times out of 10, I'm always going to normal summon the Surzeal before committing to the normal summon on D-Lotus. Plus, not to mention, D-Lotus just dies so hard to Ash Blossom. Literally every time this card got ashed, I wanted to just scoop right then and there because it just felt that bad. But I think playing 1 of this is perfectly fine, especially when you realize that it is searchable through Nightmare Pain. So we're effectively playing 4 copies of it anyway. And then obviously Geist Grinder is still just a 1-of. You definitely don't want to play more than that because the card is a bit bricky. And then to round out the monsters, still on the 3 Nibiru. Again, Hand Trap, it just goes in this format, and given the deck we're playing, which is Yubel, you definitely want to give your opponent the juiciest of tokens. That way you can just have them crash into you, or you crash into them and they take the damage. So, moving on to the spells, 3 Evil Eye Domain Pareidolia, the field spell for the Evil Eye theme. Definitely max out on that in any variant of Evil Eye you're playing. Then we're still on 3 copies of Evil Eyes Unleashed, basically a custom card for the deck. Definitely want to max out on that as well. Then we're still on the 2 Selene, 2 Gorgonale ratio for our equips. That hasn't changed from the previous deck list. However, a new addition to the list is 1 copy of Evil Eye Awakening. Evil Eye Awakening, I felt, is just a really cool 1-of, and not only does it just give us grind game, but it also allows us to revive some of our Evil Eye lines and get them back into play. So I thought it was pretty nice to have as a 1-of in the list. Then we still play the 3 Nightmare Pain, best card in the Yubel theme, hands down, so you max out on that. Gone is the Mature Chronicle that we played as a 1-of. That card is good, don't get me wrong, but I feel like that card just gets better post Legacy of Destruction when we get the additional Yubel support. Because right now I just feel like there's not enough monsters to facilitate placing counters on that card and then actually activating its effects. To me, the card just felt bricky most of the time that I had it. So I ended up cutting it for this list, and to be honest, I don't really miss it all that much. We are playing 2 Super Poly, down from the 3 of it was in the previous list. Again, I was going for maximum consistency, so I did have to cut some cards to bring the deck count down, so I had to make concessions somewhere. I do feel like playing 2 Super Poly is fine as opposed to 3, because sometimes 3 just was a little bit too bricky in my opinion, and 2 is just more than enough. But moving on, the last spell is just the one Called by the Grave. And then for the traps, we're on 2 Eternal Favorite, up from the 1 of that it was previously. This is only because I realized that this trap is stupidly insane, and I wanted to have a second copy of it, especially if you use the first copy to go ahead and Super Poly your opponent's board with its effect. So playing 2 of it obviously just feels a lot better. Then we're still on the 1 Retribution, and then to round out the traps, 3 Infinite Impermanence. Again, this is basically just to streamline the deck list and kind of refine it a little bit from the original deck profile that I brought to you guys. But the changes didn't stop at the main deck. I also changed the extra deck just slightly. We're still on the 2 copies of the Loving Defender Forever, 1 Starving Venom. Gone is the Azura King rank 3, only because that card is super situational and I rarely went into it, so I replaced it with something a bit more usable in the form of the Phantom Knights of Breaksword. Not only is this a much easier rank 3 to make, given that it requires 1 less material, but going second, it plays very nicely into breaking apart boards, but also, because it destroys the card we control, we can use it to blow up our Yubel cards proactively, which I definitely like, so it's been working out great in testing. We're still on the DDD package, the Stone King Darius, followed by the King Deuce Machinex. Then we're still on the train package of the Gustav Max and the Juggernaut Lieb. And then for the links, we're still on the 2 Gorgon, 1 Muckraker, 1 Dark for the Link 2s we play. Then for the Link 3s, we're actually on a newly added Nightmare Unicorn. This card, I feel, is just really good because it gives us access to removal that's not destruction based, which I find very attractive. We ended up cutting the excuse me, we ended up cutting the Underworld Goddess for this card, the Link 5, and that's only because I rarely made the Underworld Goddess in testing. Just because this deck doesn't really spam out that many cards, it was difficult for me to try to get to the Underworld Goddess. So Unicorn is just a card that ever since I've replaced Underworld Goddess for it, we've just been able to make much easier. And then we're still on the 1 Zerziel, and then we round out with the 1 Unchained Abomination. So like I said, the side deck remains unchanged. I have not made any changes to the side. Side still remains the same. The only changes were with the main deck specifically, and then just some minor tweaks to the extra deck. But with that being said, we are going to be jumping into some test hands. Now, I know I said it was going to be combos and test hands. However, you guys will see the combos as we do the test hands. Just because I feel like this deck makes a lot more sense when you can see the broader scope. So we're going to go ahead and pile shuffle the list really quickly, and I'll get to showing you guys how Evil Eye and Yubel gets down. So with that being said, hopefully you guys are enjoying the content. Like I said, if you made it this far into the video and you're not subscribed, subscribe. All it does is benefit the channel. It's absolutely free. And like I said, you don't want to miss out on a lot of the really cool stuff that I'm going to continue bringing to the channel in the future, whether that's post Phantom Nightmare and beyond. Like I said, I work pretty hard to bring you guys this content, and I know a lot of you guys appreciate the deck list that I cover because they're mostly things that most other content creators don't focus on. You know, a lot of other content creators tend to focus on the more meta aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! And while that's fine, I know that a lot of other players and a lot of you guys tend to also like the more casual stuff that you can just kind of go to locals and not kind of turn your brain off a little, or just play amongst your friends casually. And that's what this channel prides itself on. So, you know, like I said, if you want content like that, then definitely consider subscribing, and also like the video as well if you're a fan of Yubel and Evil Eye. So we went ahead and shuffled, and now we cut. We're going to play this test hand like we're going first, so let's see what we get. We have an Evil Eye Domain Pareidolia, Evil Eye Awakening, 1 Nightmare Pain, 1 Basilisk Familiar the Evil Eye, followed by 1 Infinite Impermanence. So this hand is actually very, very powerful. I mean, even if we were going second, we at least opened, you know, the 1 non-engine that we can kind of help to, you know, try to slow our opponents down. But we're going to lead things off. How do we want to do this? I guess there's a couple ways we can go about this. Assuming we're trying to play through Droll specifically, we probably want to lead with Nightmare Pain first. So let's go ahead and activate that card in our in our spell trap zone, excuse me. We're going to use its effect to go ahead and destroy our Basilisk that's in our hand. And then we're going to go ahead and either add a Yubel or a card that mentions it from the deck to our hand. So there's a couple of things we can actually do here. We can go for the Spirit of Yubel and just hold that in hand. Like I said, the only way we can kind of summon it is if our opponent declares an attack, which I know is a little slow. Or we could also go into the Samsara duelists line if we so choose, which with this particular hand we may end up doing, just because you'll see why momentarily. So we're going to grab the Samsara duelists here to our hand, but what we're going to do now is we're actually going to activate our Evil Eye Domain Pareidolia. We're going to use that effect to search for an Evil Eye monster on activation. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab ourselves a copy of Basilius, familiar of the Evil Eye. And you will definitely see why momentarily. We are going to go ahead and use our Evil Eye Awakening to special summon our Basilisk that's in our graveyard. And then because we control an Evil Eye monster, we can now go ahead and special summon our Basilius from our hand. We can go ahead and use this effect to send a Evil Eye card from our deck to the graveyard. I guess we can go ahead and use this effect to dump a copy of Gorgoneo to get that set up for a subsequent turn. And now at this point, we can go ahead and overlay into our copy of DDD Stone King Darius, and then we'll garnish that off with a copy of King Deuce Machinex, giving us some really decent disruption for our opponent to have to play through. But also keep in mind we haven't exhausted our normal summon yet, so now this is where the Samsara duelists comes up. We're going to go ahead and normal summon it, then use its effect to tribute itself, and then go ahead and special summon a Yubel or a monster that mentions it directly from our deck. I'm sorry, it has to be a Yubel. Correction. Tribute this card, special summon one Yubel monster from your deck. So it has to be a Yubel specific monster. It can't be a card that just mentions it. Something just to be aware of. We're going to go ahead and summon out our Spirit of Yubel, and then on summon, this will allow us to either set to our field or add to our hand oh Jesus, sorry, drawn such a blank here, my god. Yeah, if this card is special summoned, add to your hand or set a spell trap from your deck that mentions Yubel. My apologies. Wow. Totally had a lapse for a moment there. It's been a long day. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and grab Eternal Favorite, and we're going to choose to set it to our field. And then with that being said, we're going to go ahead and set our copy of Impermanence that we drew. And we can go ahead and just pass our turn. And then on the end phase, I believe that if we can... No, it's only if we control the original Yubel. So the Samsara duelists does not revive itself. But this is still an amazing board. We have 2 disruptions off the Deuce King Machinex. We also have the Infinite Impermanence, which is another disruption. And then we even have the Eternal Favorite, which... you know, at the cost of a discard, which unfortunately we don't currently have, we could super poly the opponent's board. But keep in mind that with Nightmare Pain and Spirit of Yubel out, they're forced to attack this, which obviously makes things very awkward for the opponent. So that's just the first test hand I wanted to showcase for you guys. We're going to go ahead and shuffle everything back and run another test hand so you guys can see more or less how this deck functions. My apologies for me having a bit of a brain fart there. Like I said, it's been a really long day. You know, I do these videos when I come home from work, and sometimes I'm just extremely exhausted, but that's not going to stop me from, you know, bringing you guys the content that I know everybody wants to see. So hopefully everyone appreciates, you know, the effort that I put in. And like I said, you know, you just like the video, subscribe. It definitely helps me out a ton. So like I said, we're going to go into our second test hand now. And let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the deck very briefly. Let's see here. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and cut. And we're going to play this test hand out again like we're going first. So we're going to draw a copy of Spirit of Yubel, Evil Eye Domain Pareidolia, the original Yubel, Evil Eye Gorgoneo, and a Evil Eye Gorgoneo. Very interesting opening hand here. So let's see how we want to go about this. Let's go ahead and activate Pareidolia. On activation, that will allow us to search for an Evil Eye monster from the deck to our hand, of which we'll be grabbing ourselves, in this case, a copy of Surziel. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and normal summon out the Surziel, triggering its effect to then search for an Evil Eye card from the deck to our hand. Now usually we'll be grabbing Unleashed off of this, but since we drew both Gorgonales, and Gorgonales is the spell trap we tend to want to send off Unleashed, I don't know if that's really worth it. I mean, I guess we still grab Unleashed even though we drew both Gorgonale. So here, what we'll do is we'll activate Unleashed. That will send ourselves a monster from deck to grave and a spell trap from deck to grave for cost. Keep in mind this is cost, meaning that like even if they're going to ash this, we still get to send 2 cards from deck to grave. So we're going to dump the Selene, and then let's just assume it resolves because this is just a test hand anyway. We'll grab our second copy of Selene from the deck to our hand, basically giving us not only an extender in the graveyard, but also deck thinning in the process as well, which is obviously very strong. And now in this case, we're going to go ahead and activate our Selene. And again, I know this looks super like simple, but we're pretty much going to pass turn with this particular setup. I mean, I guess if we so choose, we can also activate Gorgonale on our Surziel as well. Which, you know what, we might do that, and it'll make sense later as to why. We're going to activate both Gorgonale and Selene on our Surziel and then pass turn. Obviously, yes, the Yubel stuff's just kind of sitting in our hand, but that's okay. Like I said, it could come up during the opponent's turn. During the opponent's turn, though, we're going to use the graveyard effect of Basiltrist to special itself. And then at any point during the opponent's turn, it has the quick effect to link summon using Evil Eye monsters and or Evil Eye equips you control as the material to be able to summon. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Basiltrist and the Gorgoneo. Using, Basiltrist will get banished by its own effect, but we can link summon into Gorgon. I think it's so cool. Like, our Basiltrist is effectively an IP Masquerena for Evil Eyes, but the fact that it also lets you link summon using these equips as if they were monsters is just huge. So now we're going to make Gorgon, but because we link summoned, we trigger the graveyard effect of our Unleashed, which can banish itself to then take an equip in our grave and equip it to the newly summoned monster. So now we can take our Selene that's in the graveyard and equip it to our Gorgon as well, and still have the Surziel online as well for the pop of a special summon monster, and now we also have a monster negate. And we put the Gorgonale in the graveyard, which gives us really cool follow-up. And then at this point, if the opponent does try to attack us, because think about it, they have no clue that we're on a Yubel deck. So, if they try to break our field and they go battle, they're just going to get met with the Spirit of Yubel from our hand. It'll special itself. I generally will, if I have Gorgon, I will summon Spirit of Yubel to the zone Gorgon points to. And that's because if I use Gorgon's negate effect on the next standby phase as a mandatory effect, she will have to pop a monster that she points to. And we can use that proactively to pop our own copies of Yubel to get our Yubel engine going. We can do the same thing with Surziel, because if he does pop a special summon monster on the next standby phase, he does the same thing as well. And that's kind of how we get access to both engines, which I think is really, really cool. So let's do one more test hand before we wrap things up here. I don't want to make this video too long, but at the same time, I just want to show you guys, the different outcomes of what you can have access to with this deck. So we're going to go ahead and pile shuffle again very, very quickly. Like I said, guys, let me know down below in the comments what you think of this particular list, and also what you think of the updates that I did to the list to optimize it. Let me know if you think, the changes I made are for the better, or if you think the old version was better. Like I said, the deck does get a lot more consistent post Legacy of Destruction, so I cannot wait for that set to drop, because, we're getting 2 more Yubel-specific support cards. I believe it's a Nightmare Throne, which is a field spell, and then we're getting a retrain of... oh god, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's a level 1 Fiend monster that's also really cool. It's a quick effect extender from the hand, which is nice if we control a Fiend. And if I'm not mistaken, it can special summon Fiend monsters with 0 attack and defense from the graveyard, which is really cool. So I'm definitely looking forward to those cards come Legacy of Destruction. So we went ahead and shuffled and then cut, and we're going to play this out again like we're going first. We have Yubel, we have Basilius, we have Basiltrist, we have Terror Incarnate, and then we also have the Evil Eye of Selene. So this hand is kind of interesting. It sucks that we drew the Yubel and the Terror Incarnate, but that's okay though. Like I said, it's not the end of the world. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and can normal summon our Basilius, activate its effect to go ahead and send an Evil Eye spell trap from our deck to the graveyard. So we're going to go ahead and dump a copy of our Gorgonale. Then we're going to use Gorgonale's grave effects, banishing itself and then discarding an Evil Eye card to go ahead and allow us to search for an Evil Eye spell trap from the deck to our hand. Of which we can use that to go ahead and grab ourselves a copy of Unleashed. And then we can activate Unleashed. That will go ahead and send a Basilisk from our deck to grave and another copy of Gorgonale to allow us to search for a copy of Selene. Then what we can do is we can special summon the Basilisk that we have in our hand. And then we can just overlay and go into, like I said, our DDD line, which will be our Stone King Darius and our Divisor King Deuce Machinex. And that would pretty much be the extent of this particular test hand. Again, not the best opening hand, but at least we're still able to end on some decent disruption despite that. So let's do one more test hand. I just want to give you guys like enough sample test hands. That way you guys have something decent to draw from. Let me go ahead and get this shuffled up. It's interesting that we haven't drawn into a copy of Nightmare Pain. That card is so good, and it does help out a lot with bridging these two themes together. It just helps that the Evil Eyes are all, like, you know, darks. Nightmare Pain can just destroy them to generate more advantage and value. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and cut, and let's draw one last final test hand for you guys. We have Pareidolia, Selene, Surzeal, Basilius, and Basilisk. So we didn't even draw into our Yubel side of the deck, but that's okay though, because the Evil Eyes honestly are still do enough to carry us. We have access to a lot here. We can do quite a bit, honestly. Let's go ahead and normal summon Surzeal, get that established. Off of the Surzeal, we're going to go ahead and grab ourselves a copy of Unleashed. Then off the Unleashed, we're going to go ahead and bin ourselves a copy of Gorgonale and the remaining Basilisk that's in the deck. And that will allow us to search for a equip spell. But in this case, since we already have Selene, what we're going to do is we're actually going to grab a copy of Gorgonale to our hand. Let's see here. Then what we can do is we can special summon the Basilius, activate its effect to Foolish Burial Goods, a spell trap. We'll just bin a Unleashed. Just trying to deck thin here. And then we can still special summon out a Basilisk, but let's go ahead and use the one from our graveyard. And then again, we can still go for our DDD line, like we did in the previous combo. We usually go into this if assuming we're going first, just because it's a really nice disruption to set up for our opponent. And then what we can do is we can go ahead and activate Pareidolia, I guess. Use its effect to deck thin even further. That will search us for our Basilius. Or if we don't want Basilius, we can just grab another Surzeal for follow-up, technically. So we could do that instead. And then what we can do here is we can just activate Selene, equip to Surzeal. And then on the opponent's turn, you know, they have the Divisor King Deuce Machinex to play through. And then once we utilize its effect, obviously we detach for effect, not for cost. That'll put both Basilius and Basilisk in grave, in which case we can just summon the Basilisk back as a quick effect, and then use its effect to link on the opponent's turn into more stuff. And then since we already have our copies of Unleashed in the graveyard, when the Selene does go to the grave, because we're linking off with Surzeal, we can just re-equip the Selene back to whatever we summoned, whether that's going to be a Gorgon, or in this case, we can even try and go for a Surzeal setup as well. But like I said, this is pretty much the deck list. You know, I wish I could have done more test hands to show you guys, but again, I wanted to keep the video in a decent time limit. But with that being said, like, comment, subscribe down below. Let me know what you guys think of the changes and what you think of the deck in general. Like I said, Nightmare Pain's a really good card because it does bridge both themes together. It's kind of sucky that, like, all the test hands we did, and we never really drew the Nightmare Pain, you know, as much as I would have liked, but sometimes that's just the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. So like I said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Stay tuned for more content coming your way post Phantom Nightmare. You definitely don't want to miss out on the spice I'm going to have for you guys coming very soon. With that being said, guys, again, happy Valentine's Day, and this is Nick hitting that end phase. Peace.